When peace becomes your power, the gentle thief of peace, let me ask you something, and I ask not to challenge you, but to invite you inward, to the quiet space within you that's been whispering for far too long. How many times have you let something so small steal so much? A glance, a word, a moment. How many times have you walked away from a conversation only to carry the weight of it for hours, maybe days? Not because it was loud, not because it was cruel, but because it struck something inside of you, something raw, something you thought you'd buried long ago. Have you ever noticed how the smallest interactions can feel the heaviest? A subtle tone, a raised brow, a missed reply, and suddenly you're not just reacting to this moment, you're reacting to every similar moment that came before it. Like echoes in a canyon, the past comes rushing back, uninvited. But here's a quiet truth I want you to hold gently. Your peace isn't fragile. It's not something others get to fumble with. It's not a currency to be handed out in exchange for approval, attention, or apology. And yet, we give it away so easily, don't we? Not because we want to, but because no one ever taught us how to protect it. No one ever told us that we are allowed to pause, to breathe, to not internalize someone else's storm. So, let me be the one who tells you now, you don't have to absorb what doesn't belong to you. You don't have to carry what they handed you in anger. You don't have to hold space for someone else's pain when it is thrown like a weapon. You don't have to clutch a story that isn't yours. It's okay to feel the sting, but you don't have to stay in the burn. Because peace, real peace, isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about understanding where your boundaries are. It's about knowing that someone else's opinion isn't your truth, that their tone is not your reflection, that their frustration is not your burden. Too often, we walk through the day absorbing energy like sponges, soaking in every unsaid word, every side glance, every shift in tone, and then we wonder why we feel so tired. Why do we feel drained? Why do we feel lost in our own skin? But you are not meant to be a sponge. You are meant to be a mountain, rooted, grounded, steady, no matter the weather that passes through. Because here's something most people never realize. You are not required to react. You are not obligated to match their anger, their urgency, or their fear. You can witness and stay still. You can listen without responding. You can care without carrying. That is not coldness. That is clarity. That is knowing the difference between what is yours to hold and what is simply passing through. So many of us have been taught that silence is a weakness, that not reacting means you're letting someone win, that if you don't defend yourself immediately, you've surrendered. But friend, hear me. Silence is not surrender. Stillness is not submission. Letting go is not losing. Sometimes it is the most powerful move you can make, because true strength, the kind that lasts, it isn't loud, it isn't theatrical, it doesn't need to be seen to be real. It is quiet, it is unseen. It is you, sitting in the center of a storm and saying, "This won't move me." You do not owe anyone your peace. You do not owe anyone your reaction. You owe yourself the sacred stillness that reminds you you are not at the mercy of outside chaos. You are the master of your inner calm. And yes, it's hard at first, when someone throws sharp words at you, when their disrespect tastes like betrayal, when your entire being wants to react, to clap back, to prove something, to say, "You will not treat me this way." But ask yourself, what do I gain from this? Do I gain clarity? Do I gain growth? Do I gain anything at all, except exhaustion? Because the truth is, when you react in anger, you hand them the steering wheel. You let them drive your emotions. You let them dictate your day, your mood, your mental space. And tell me, Who deserves that kind of access to your inner world? Certainly not everyone. Your emotions are sacred. Your inner light is sacred, and it is not for sale, not for rent, not for public consumption. You get to choose who enters your peace. You get to choose what energy you accept. You get to choose which voices become echoes in your mind and which ones fade into silence. And that is where healing begins, not in the absence of conflict, but in the presence of choice. The choice to pause, the choice to rise above, the choice to let go, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. So the next time someone tries to rattle you, pause, breathe, ask yourself gently, is this worth my peace? And if the answer is no, walk away in silence, in grace, in full possession of your power, because the most powerful thing you can do sometimes is not to fight, but to not be moved. When peace becomes your power, part 2, the illusion of control. We grow up believing we can control the world outside us, that if we say the right thing, people will treat us kindly. What if we look the right way, speak the right way, act the right way? We'll avoid conflict, we'll be respected, we'll be loved. And so we try to anticipate every reaction. We try to prevent misunderstandings before they happen. We try to stay in control of everything, of everyone. But one day, quietly, life reveals a truth that shakes us awake. No matter how much you do, no matter how good you are, people will still project. They will project their fear, their insecurity, their pain, their past, and you might just be standing in the way when it happens. You didn't cause it, but you'll feel it. Unless you know how to release what isn't yours, you can't control the storm, but you can control whether you stand in the rain. Let me say that again because this is the lesson most people spend a lifetime chasing. You cannot control what someone else says or does. You can only control whether you allow it to become your identity. And that distinction, that sacred separation, is where your peace is born. Most people believe emotions are automatic, that they just happen to us, like sudden weather, like waves. But the truth is, emotions are not lightning strikes, they are responses. And responses can be observed, they can be understood, they can be softened. The power is not in denying your feelings. It's in learning not to become them. When someone offends you, it is normal to feel hurt, but what happens after that is where you choose. Do you hold it? Do you let it define your day? Do you replay it over and over, giving it new life each time? Or do you acknowledge it, breathe, and return to yourself? The more you practice this, the more you'll see the truth. You are not your reaction. You are the awareness beneath it. Most people don't know this, so they react instantly, emotionally, loudly. They fight back, they defend, they raise their voices, thinking that's what power looks like. But real power, real grounded inner power, doesn't rush to respond. It pauses, it seems, it waits. It understands that sometimes silence is the loudest message you can send. Think of the last time someone tried to pull you into drama, tried to push your buttons, tried to spark a fight. What if in that moment you had chosen not to engage, not to fight, not to prove, just to see it and let it pass? That isn't a weakness. That's restraint. That's intelligence. That's wisdom disguised as stillness. And here's what they don't tell you. That choice, that moment when you let go of control over others and return to control over yourself, that is when everything changes. Because now, you're not reacting like a puppet. Now you're responding like a master of your own mind, your own spirit, your own peace. This is the shift from control of others to control of self. When you truly understand this, you become unshakable, not because people stop disrespecting you, but because their disrespect no longer finds a place to live inside you. That's the moment you stop absorbing and start observing. That's the moment your peace becomes untouchable. So if you've been walking through life trying to manage everything around you, please take a breath, put it down. You were never meant to carry the weight of other people's moods. You were never meant to manage their storms. You were meant to return to the stillness of your own sky. And when you do that, when you stop fighting for control out there and start mastering the peace in here, you realize something life-changing. You were never powerless. You were just pointed in the wrong direction. When peace becomes your power, the power in restraint, choosing to not be moved, there's something magnetic about a person who doesn't react, not because they're cold, not because they don't care, but because they've learned a rare art in a noisy world, the art of restraint. You see, anyone can explode. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can clap back with clever words and sharp eyes. That's easy. That's impulsive. That's reflex. But to sit with your emotions, to feel the fire rise and not feed it, to breathe when every part of you wants to strike back, that's mastery. And yet, most of us weren't taught this. We were taught that if someone disrespects you, you must respond. That if someone crosses a line, you must show them who they're messing with. That silence is losing. That stillness is a weakness. But here's the truth. Stillness is not suppression. It is sovereignty. It is choosing not to hand your power to the loudest energy in the room. When you learn to be still, when you learn to not be moved, you step into a level of freedom most never touch. You realize that you don't need to control every situation. You don't need to convince people of your worth. You don't need to win arguments that don't even matter in the grand design of your life. Because winning is not always louder. Sometimes winning is walking away with your peace intact, your energy preserved, your dignity shining. Let's be honest, people will try you. They will test your patience. They will bring their chaos to your doorstep. And in those moments, they are not really speaking to you. They're projecting their pain, their fear, their wounds. And if you're not careful, you'll start carrying their emotions like they're your own, but that's not yours to hold. You have the right to feel the flame without becoming the fire. You have the right to witness the storm without stepping into the rain. This is the power of restraint. Restraint is not about silence because you have nothing to say. It's about choosing not to say it because peace is more important than being right. It's about understanding this. You don't need to react to every trigger. You don't need to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't need to respond to every whisper of judgment or shadow of drama. Not everything deserves your voice. Not everyone deserves your energy. Because your energy, your sacred, radiant energy, is not meant to be wasted on foolishness. You're not here to prove yourself to the ones who never intended to understand you. You're not here to fight battles that drain your soul and steal your clarity. You're here for something higher, something softer, something more sacred. And that something begins with restraint. Restraint is what separates the reactive from the wise, the impulsive from the powerful, the emotionally enslaved from the spiritually free. Restraint says, I see what you're trying to do, but I won't join you in the mud. Restraint says, I know who I am, and I don't need to argue with those who haven't yet discovered themselves. Restraint says, I value my peace more than your approval, and that is what it means to not be moved. Not because you're numb, but because you're rooted. Not because you're afraid, but because you've already made your choice, and your choice is peace. When people ask, "How are you so calm when everything's on fire?" you'll smile, because they won't know that the fire they see, you've already walked through worse and came out brighter. That is the strength found in stillness. That is the elegance of restraint. That is the quiet kind of power that doesn't roar, but radiates. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause, notice what rises in you, and then, with gentleness, with grace, choose not to be moved. Let them wonder. Let them talk. Because your silence isn't empty. It's sacred. When peace becomes your power, the sacred pause, where power meets grace, there is a moment, so small it's almost invisible, between the trigger and the reaction, a breath, a beat. A space is so delicate that most people miss it entirely. But in that space is everything. That space is where your power lives. It's where you get to choose who you want to be. It's where you decide whether to be pulled by the current or to stay grounded in your truth. Most people never find that space. They live in a world of reflex, a world where every word demands a reply, where every offense demands a defense, where emotion becomes impulse and impulse becomes action. But you are not like most people. You are learning the sacred art of the pause that says, "I don't need to react right now. I don't need to defend my ego. I don't need to match chaos with chaos." Because you've come to understand something rare. Not every storm deserves your sail. The pause is not a weakness. It is wisdom. It is the moment where emotion softens, where intention steps forward. The pause is where you hear your own voice before the noise of the world takes over. And if you can make a home there, in that pause, in that stillness, in that breath that separates you from the reaction, then you have already won. Let me ask you, what would your life look like if you paused more? Before the harsh words? Before the angry reply? Before the hasty judgment? How many relationships would have healed or never broken? How much peace could you have protected? Sometimes we don't need more answers. We just need more pause. Because here's what no one teaches us. Every time you pause, you become more powerful. You gain a moment of clarity. You give your nervous system space to regulate. You give your higher self room to rise. And in that room, you don't just react. You respond with grace, with dignity, with sovereignty. The pause is where reaction ends and conscious living begins. It is where your life shifts from autopilot to alignment. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause, feel the heat rise, and breathe anyway. Let the silence stretch, and stay with it. Let your ego whisper, and choose not to follow, because the version of you that reacts, that's the version shaped by past pain, by wounds not yet healed, but the version of you that responds, that's the version shaped by peace, by presence, by purpose. This is what it means to be powerful in a quiet way, to walk through the fire and not become the flame, to be in the room, but not of the chaos. And yes, people may mistake your pause for hesitation. Let them. They may think your stillness means surrender. Let them. They don't know what it took to build that pause. Train yourself not to lash out, to sit with your emotions instead of unleashing them, to feel everything and still choose peace. That is not a weakness. That is the highest form of emotional strength. So hold on to your pause like a sacred jewel. Let it be the gateway to your calm. Let it be the place you return to again and again whenever the world gets too loud, because the pause is where your light gets to decide whether it will shine or shatter. When peace becomes your power, the mountain and the wind Anchoring yourself amidst the storm, imagine a mountain. Now imagine a storm. The wind howls, the rain lashes, lightning cracks across the sky. Everything around the mountain is in motion, wild, relentless, uncertain. But the mountain, it does not move. It does not shake. It does not shout back. It does not ask the sky to calm down. It simply stands, unmoved, unshaken, unbothered. And this, dear soul, is what it looks like to live in your center when the world around you tries to pull you out of it. This is the practice of anchoring, because storms are inevitable. People will come at you with their chaos, with their projections, their pain, and their unmet expectations, with their bad moods and sharp words and wounded hearts that don't know how to speak kindly. And if you are not anchored, if you are not rooted, you will get swept into their storm. You will mistake their words for your identity. You will take their drama into your bloodstream. You will respond out of fear, pride, or insecurity instead of peace. But the mountain, the soul who is anchored, does not do this. The anchored soul knows, I am not here to match your storm. I am here to remain my sky. Let me ask you, when someone criticizes you, when they dismiss your presence, when they project their frustration onto you without warning or cause, how quickly do you bend? How deeply do you shake? Or have you learned to stay grounded, not in ego, but in truth? Because truth is what roots you, not the truth others invent about you, but the truth you've come to know deep within yourself. That your worth is not up for debate, that your peace is not an open door, that your energy is not a battleground for every wounded passerby. You are not here to absorb their weather. You are here to observe it and choose whether to open your windows or close them. And here's the beautiful paradox. You can be soft and still be strong. You can be kind and still say no. You can care deeply and still protect your peace. In fact, the deeper your compassion, the greater your need for boundaries, because people will mistake your openness for availability. They will assume that because you're gentle, you're also weak, that because you listen, you'll never walk away. But remember this, the most grounded people in the world often speak the least because they're too busy anchoring themselves in the silence beneath the storm. Being a mountain doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you don't collapse. It means you've learned the wisdom of waiting, the calmness of presence, the clarity of not reacting to every gust of wind. So the next time a storm rises around you, in the form of criticism, conflict, or confusion, don't rush to respond. Don't let your nervous system take the wheel. Just breathe. And remember the mountain. You are allowed to be still. You are allowed to be silent. You are allowed to remain rooted in your inner knowing, even when the world begs you to break. Let them rage. Let the wind howl. Let the storm pass through, because you are the mountain, and the mountain does not move. When peace becomes your power, guarding your energy, the currency of the soul, let's imagine this. You're holding $1,000 in your hand. A stranger walks up and says, "Give me $500 because I'm having a bad day." Would you hand it over? No, of course not. You'd protect it. You'd say, "This is mine. I worked for this. I value this." And yet, every single day, we give away something even more valuable without a second thought. Our energy. We give it to the person who cuts us off in traffic, to the coworker with the sharp tongue, to the stranger online who doesn't know us but thinks they do, to the one text that ruined our mood, to the one argument we keep rehearsing in our heads long after it ended. And every time we do, we spend a piece of our peace. But what if your energy, your attention, your emotional clarity, your inner light was your most precious currency? What if every time you reacted, you weren't winning, you were spending? And what if the ones provoking you knew that? You see, not everyone wants your healing. Some people feed on your reaction. They thrive on chaos. They feel powerful when they can pull you off center. But you don't have to pay that toll. You don't have to spend your soul to match their storm, because your energy is not for sale. Not to every conversation, not to every conflict, not to every cry for attention disguised as cruelty. Let me be clear. You are not required to carry what drains you. Just because someone offers you their pain doesn't mean you have to accept it. Just because someone invites you to battle doesn't mean you have to show up. And just because someone raises their voice doesn't mean they've earned your ears. Your energy, your sacred, luminous, life-giving energy, is your responsibility. It's what fuels your creativity. It's what nourishes your relationships. It's what allows you to heal, to love, to serve, to dream. And every time you give it away carelessly, you deplete the very thing that keeps your spirit alive. So protect it. Protect it like you'd protect your breath, like you'd protect your child, like you'd protect your future. Because that's what it is. Your energy is your compass. It tells you what aligns and what doesn't. It tells you when to stay and when to walk away. It tells you who adds light to your life and who only brings shadow. The more you listen to that inner compass, the less explanation you'll need to give. You'll stop justifying why you left the room, why you didn't respond, why do you no longer attend the drama. Because when you know the cost, you stop paying the price. And here's something else. Guarding your energy doesn't mean building walls. It means building awareness. It means asking with love, not judgment, is this moment nourishing or depleting me? Is this interaction expanding or shrinking me? Is this mine to carry? And if the answer is no, you let it pass. You bless it with silence. You keep your light intact, because the more you protect your energy, the more you'll notice something beautiful. You feel lighter. You feel clearer. You feel you. You'll start to realize how many weights you were never meant to carry. How much heaviness have you inherited from others? How many thoughts weren't even yours? And in that awareness, you reclaim your energy. You reclaim your light. You reclaim your life. So the next time someone tries to draw you in with their anger, their drama, their noise, pause, place your hand on your heart, and ask yourself, is this worth the currency of my soul? And if it's not, walk away, not out of indifference, but out of reverence, because your energy is sacred, and sacred things are not tossed to the crowd. When peace becomes your power, unbothered, not unkind, the beauty of detachment without disconnection. There's a misconception floating in the world that if you're unbothered, you're cold, that if you don't react, you don't care, that if you walk away, you're distant, detached, unfeeling. But what if I told you it's the opposite? What if being unbothered isn't about apathy, but about wisdom? What if it isn't about shutting down, but about opening up to peace? You see, detachment is not disconnection. You can love people deeply and still choose to not carry their chaos. You can be compassionate without becoming consumed. You can care without collapsing. We were never meant to absorb everything, not every emotion, not every expectation, not every storm. Someone else is trying to survive. There is a kind of strength, quiet, elegant, in being able to say, I see you, I hear you, I honor your struggle, but I will not lose myself inside it. That is sacred detachment. It's the skill of keeping your heart open, but your center is grounded It's the decision to stop letting every ripple in the world become a tidal wave inside your chest. It's standing at the shoreline of someone else's pain without letting it pull you under. Let me be clear. This is not coldness. This is not cruelty. This is not ignoring the people you love. This is clarity. Clarity that says, I am not your savior. I am not your emotional punching bag. I am not your storage unit for unresolved wounds. You are allowed to be kind and clear. You are allowed to be present and protected. You are allowed to love people without losing yourself in the process. So many of us were raised to believe that love means carrying everything, that if we don't suffer with someone, we don't really love them, that if we don't answer every call, every mood swing, every meltdown, we're abandoning them. But let me offer this. True love doesn't require self-destruction. True presence doesn't mean drowning. True compassion doesn't mean chaos. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourself is to remain calm in their storm, to anchor instead of absorb, to stand beside them, not beneath their weight, to say, I will not abandon you, but I will not abandon myself for you either. Because the truth is, when you lose yourself to help someone else, you're not helping, you're disappearing. And when you disappear too often, you forget how to come back to yourself. So what does detachment really look like? It looks like knowing when to step in and when to step back. It looks like offering love without tying your worth to their response. It looks like saying, I care deeply, but I will not crumble to prove it. It's knowing that their healing is not your responsibility, that their triggers are not your fault, that their silence, their mood, their approval does not define your value. Because when you stop tying your peace to other people's behavior, you start living with a freedom so powerful, it humbles you. You begin to see clearly who brings you peace and who only borrows it, who meets you in calm and who only comes to stir the waters. And then, gently, without bitterness, you begin to rearrange your life accordingly. You start choosing alignment over attachment, peace over performance, sanity over sacrifice. This is not rejection. This is not abandonment. This is sacred discernment, because the most radiant version of you, the one who loves well, dreams fully, and walks lightly, is the one who is free from emotional entanglement, not disconnected, but deeply rooted, not unfeeling, but fiercely protective of what matters most. So the next time someone calls you distant for choosing peace over drama, smile, not in pride, but in truth. You are not distant. You are just done dancing with chaos. You are not cold. You are just clear. You are not heartless. You are just no longer bleeding for what never nourished you. That's not detachment. That's devotion to your light, your life, your healing. And that is holy. When peace becomes your power, silence as a superpower, when stillness speaks louder than words, let me ask you something. When was the last time you let silence speak for you? Not out of fear, not out of surrender, but because you knew words weren't needed, because you understood that in some moments, the most powerful thing you can offer is your stillness. We live in a world that equates volume with strength. That assumes the loudest voice wins. That teaches us to respond to everything instantly, emotionally, urgently. But there is a deeper wisdom. The more at peace you are, the less you need to explain. Silence is misunderstood. People mistake it for weakness. They think silence means you have nothing to say, that you froze, that you gave in. But here's the truth that few dare to live. Silence is not emptiness. It is restraint. It is power under perfect control. When you choose not to speak, not because you're afraid, but because you refuse to waste your words on noise. You elevate the conversation. You show that your peace cannot be purchased, that your presence is not triggered by chaos. You are not here to be baited, provoked, or pulled into pointless storms. You see, people who are loud often reveal their weaknesses. They shout because they want to be heard, not understood. They talk over others to cover their own uncertainty. But those who walk in truth, those who are anchored in their spirit, they don't need to prove it. They don't need to argue. They don't need to explain what they've already embodied. Their silence speaks for them. It says, I see what you're trying to do. I see the projection, the drama, the performance, and I'm not interested. Silence says, I'm not here to convince you. I'm here to conserve me. Think about the last time someone tried to provoke you, tried to make you react, tried to corner you into defensiveness. What if you had simply paused? What if you had looked at them, smiled, and said nothing at all? Do you know how disarming that is? Do you know how powerful it is to offer no fuel to a fire that feeds on attention? Silence dismantles nonsense. It removes the stage from those performing pain. It withdraws permission from those seeking power through conflict. It strips drama of its oxygen, because what they want, what they need, is your reaction. And when you give them nothing, you return to yourself. You protect your energy. You preserve your clarity. You walk away with your dignity intact. And let me tell you, not everyone deserves your voice. Not every battle is holy. Not every invitation deserves an RSVP. Sometimes, the most spiritual act is to say nothing, to walk away, to let the noise collapse under its own weight. But silence doesn't just protect. It reveals. It shows you who's willing to sit with discomfort, who listens when you don't speak, who can remain present without performance. It shows you who truly sees you beyond your words, and it shows you who you've become. Because when you no longer feel the need to respond to everything, you've risen. When you no longer seek to correct every misunderstanding, you've matured. When you can sit, fully grounded, in a moment of tension and feel no urgency to fill it, that is mastery. That is spiritual authority. That is emotional sovereignty. So practice silence, not as avoidance, but as alignment. Let it be your sacred space. Let it be your sanctuary. When the world gets too loud, let it be your reply. When nothing kind, helpful, or necessary needs to be said, and when people misunderstand your silence, let them. You are not responsible for the stories others write in your absence. You are responsible for the peace you carry in your presence. So speak when your words will build. Speak when your voice brings clarity. Speak when your truth needs to be heard. But when silence is stronger, kinder, truer, let that be your choice. Because silence, intentional, powerful silence, is not the absence of a response. It is the presence of wisdom. When peace becomes your power, letting go without losing yourself, the courage to release what no longer serves you. Let's speak honestly. Letting go is one of the hardest things a soul can do. We hold on to people, to words left unsaid, to old versions of ourselves, to memories that sting and soothe in equal measure. We carry things far past their expiration date, not because we're weak, but because we loved, because we tried, because we didn't know who we'd be without them. But here's the truth that healing whispers. You can let go without losing yourself. Letting go is not forgetting. It is not failure. It is not betrayal. It's choosing peace over the illusion of control. It's choosing your present over your past. It's recognizing that something or someone is no longer aligned with your becoming. And that choice, that sacred, trembling choice, it's one of the greatest acts of self-respect. But oh, how we resist it. We cling to what hurt us, because at least it's familiar. We stay in roles we've outgrown. Because they once made us feel safe, we replay what went wrong, hoping this time it'll end differently in our minds. And in the process, we become heavy, worn, tired in ways sleep can't fix, because carrying what's no longer ours to carry will always cost us our light. Letting go means releasing the illusion that closure must come from someone else. Letting go means knowing you may never get the apology. They may never explain. They may never understand. And that's okay, because closure doesn't come from them. It comes from within. It comes the moment you say, I no longer need what hurt me to make sense. I no longer require their permission to move on. I choose to set down what was never mine to keep. That is freedom. But it takes courage. It takes courage to admit that something once good has turned heavy. It takes courage to walk away with love still in your heart. It takes courage to say, this chapter is over. I bless it, but I won't reread it. And listen, letting go doesn't mean you didn't love well. It means you're loving yourself enough now to create space for what's next. Because sometimes your healing demands a clean canvas, and you can't paint a new beginning with yesterday's brush. So ask yourself gently, what am I holding on to that's holding me back? What weight have I carried for so long? I've forgotten how light I could feel without it. Who have I made responsible for my happiness when that was always my responsibility? It's okay to grieve what you let go of. That grief is sacred. It's the echo of your soul, learning how to release with grace, but never confuse release with rejection. You are not rejecting the love, the lessons, the moments that mattered. You are honoring them by letting them live in the past where they belong, because the longer you grip what no longer fits, the longer you delay what is waiting to arrive. Letting go isn't about pushing away. It's about opening your hands. And when your hands are open, life can finally place something new in them. A new piece, a new beginning, a new version of you, lighter, wiser, radiant. So let it go. Let it go with tears, if you must. Let it go with gratitude. Let it go with trembling hands and a steady soul. But let it go, not because you're done feeling, but because you're done hurting. Not because it never mattered, but because you finally realized you matter too. And that is the sacred beginning that always follows a courageous release. When peace becomes your power, peace is the new power, becoming untouchable in a world that wants your attention. There comes a moment in every soul's journey when the noise becomes unbearable. The world calls louder, distractions multiply, opinions fly, demands pile up like waves against your inner walls. And in that moment, you are given a choice. You can chase validation, chase approval, chase the next argument, the next justification, the next emotional spike, or you can choose peace. And let me tell you something rare and revolutionary. Peace is the new power. In a world that thrives on reaction, peace is rebellion. In a culture obsessed with appearances, peace is authenticity. In a timeline of scrolling, swiping, shouting, peace is presence, and it is powerful, because nothing disturbs the system more than a person who cannot be rattled, a person who does not flinch when provoked, who does not argue for ego, who does not run from silence, who does not crumble under chaos. They are the ones who shift the atmosphere, not by force, but by frequency, because their stillness is not passive. It is deeply rooted. It is earned. It is forged in the fire of everything they once allowed to break them, but no longer do. This is who you become when peace becomes your power. You walk into rooms differently. You speak less, but say more. You no longer explain your worth. You embody it. You no longer debate your truth. You live it. People won't always understand. They'll say you've changed. They'll say you've grown distant. They may even say you think you're better than them. Let them, because what they're really witnessing is someone who is no longer available for chaos. Someone who has decided that peace is too expensive to keep trading for petty battles. Someone who wakes up in the morning and guards their energy like royalty guards a crown, not out of arrogance, but out of sacred responsibility. And yes, you'll still feel things. Peace doesn't mean numbness. You'll still get hurt. You'll still be disappointed. You'll still walk through days where your patience is tested and your spirit feels thin. But now, you respond differently, because now you don't hand people your peace like loose change. Now, you don't confuse urgency with importance. Now, you don't let every emotion sit at your table and feast on your clarity. Now, you choose. You choose silence when noise wants a reaction. You choose stillness when chaos begs for movement. You choose to rise instead of retaliate. And what begins to shift is everything. You become magnetic, not by seeking attention, but by radiating alignment. You attract better, not by chasing, but by being. You command respect, not by raising your voice, but by raising your vibration. And, without saying a word, you teach the world how to treat you. You teach people that access to your energy is a privilege, not a right. You teach your younger self that safety is always possible. You teach your future self that freedom begins not with control, but with surrender to your highest self. So as we come to the end of this journey, let me remind you of what you already know deep down. You are allowed to outgrow what once fit. You are allowed to protect your light. You are allowed to be peaceful and powerful. You are allowed to live soft and stand strong, because peace is not the absence of problems. It is the presence of unwavering power inside you. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself. The kind that doesn't react to noise. The kind that moves through life like water, calm, clear, unstoppable. That's the kind of peace the world cannot touch. And when you walk in that, you don't just survive this life, you bless it with your presence. So walk gently, speak slowly, protect your sacred energy like the rare treasure it is. And remember, you are no longer available for anything that costs your peace. That's not a weakness. That's wisdom. That's not running. That's rising. That's not being too sensitive. That's becoming untouchable. Conclusion: the return to your inner light. If you've walked with me this far, then you've done more than read words. You've chosen to meet yourself, soul to soul. You've stood in the fire of your own triggers. You've looked your reactions in the eye. You've dared to pause where others push, to breathe where others break, to rise where others rage. And now you know something most never discover. Peace is not a destination. It's a decision, a choice made moment by moment, breath by breath. You've learned that your energy is currency, and not every situation is worth the cost. That your silence is not emptiness, but presence. That stillness is not surrender, but strength. You've seen what happens when you step out of reactivity and step into restraint, not because you're passive, but because you're powerful. You've discovered how sacred the pause is, how liberating it feels to not be pulled into every emotional storm, how life begins to soften, not because it changes, but because you do. You've faced the fear of letting go and honored the wisdom of release. You've laid down burdens never meant to be yours. You've opened your hands. You've opened your heart. And in doing so, you've made space for your own light to return. This is not about perfection. You will still be tested. You will still have moments where anger rises, where fear flares, where your past knocks on the door. But now, you know how to pause. You know how to anchor. You know how to protect the flame inside you. Instead of fanning the fires around you, you have become what the world cannot shake. Unbothered, but not unkind. Detached, but deeply present. Silent, but radiant with truth. Soft, but immovably strong. You've stepped into a sacred kind of power, the kind that does not control others, but masters the self. And that is what makes you untouchable. So from this day forward, carry this truth with you. You are allowed to protect your peace. You are allowed to choose calm over conflict. You are allowed to walk away, not out of weakness, but out of reverence for your soul. And when the world grows loud again, because it will, return to this place, this quiet place inside you, this home of stillness, this light. Your peace is your power, your stillness is your strength, and your presence is your gift. So rise gently, move with grace, live with intention, and never again let anything or anyone take you away from yourself. Welcome back to your power. Welcome home to your soul.